Have you ever just wished for a manual for life? Not just some random advice, but a real, time-tested set of instructions for building something meaningful and successful? Well, today, we're going to look at exactly that, an ancient blueprint for a life that's actually built to last.
So let's just get right into it. We all want to build something valuable with our time here, right? But where do you even start? What are the absolute essentials? Well, an ancient text, Proverbs chapter 24, gives us a surprisingly practical and powerful answer, and it frames the whole project with this one simple metaphor.
And there it is, right in verse 3, the core idea. Your life is like a house, and if you want to build it right, if you want it to be strong and stable, you can't just make it up as you go. You need a plan. And the number one material, the concrete holding it all together, is wisdom.
So let's start exactly where any good builder would, the foundation. Because according to this blueprint, if your foundation isn't rock solid, everything you try to build on top of it is just going to crumble. And that foundation, without a doubt, is wisdom.
Now, when the text talks about wisdom, it's not talking about something abstract, like having a high IQ or knowing a bunch of trivia. Verses 3 and 4 define wisdom as a practical, hands-on skill. It's the actual ability to build your life, to establish it firmly, and then to fill it with what it calls precious and pleasant riches.
So how does this wisdom actually make you strong? Well, the blueprint lays it all out for us in verses 5 and 6. First, it says a wise man is strong, period. Then, a man of knowledge actively increases that strength. But, and this is key, it's not a solo project. The blueprint says you wage your war, all of life's challenges, with wise counsel. Because, as verse 6 puts it, in a multitude of counselors, there is safety.
But here's the warning label that comes with the blueprint. Verse 7 gives us this really stark contrast. For the person who just ignores all this, who the text calls a fool, for them, wisdom is simply too high. It's totally out of reach. You can't lay this essential foundation if you refuse to even look for it.
Okay, so with that solid foundation of wisdom in place, it's time to put up the framework. This next part is all about our actions, our integrity, how we treat other people. This is the very structure of the house that we're living in every single day.
And the blueprint immediately hits us with a tough one in verses 11 and 12. It says we have a duty to help people who are in mortal danger. And it cuts right through the most common excuse we all make. Oh, well, we didn't know. The text response is sharp. It basically says the one who judges our hearts knows if we're telling the truth. Looking the other way on purpose is not an option.
Now look at this. Just the number 7. It seems so random, right? But it's actually the key to one of the most encouraging ideas in this whole chapter for building a good life. So what in the world could it mean?
And boom, here's the answer from verse 16. It's all about resilience. Being a just person isn't about being perfect. It's not about never messing up. It's about what happens after you fall. The just person falls 7 times, which kind of symbolizes over and over again, and gets back up. The structure holds. The wicked, on the other hand, they fall and they stay down. So a huge part of justice is just having the grit to get back on your feet.
A strong framework also means having emotional discipline, especially when someone wrongs you. Verse 17 is pretty direct. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth. And verse 29 warns us not to get caught in that revenge trap, saying, Say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me. This blueprint demands a higher standard, one that breaks the destructive cycle instead of just keeping it going.
And what about our public life, our integrity? Verses 24 and 25 lay out 2 very different paths. There's the corrupt path, where you flatter the wicked, telling them they're in the right. The text says, that'll get you cursed by the people. But then there's the righteous path, calling out what's wrong, and that leads to delight and a good blessing. Speaking truth, even when it's hard, is like a load-bearing wall in this house.
All right, the foundation is set, the framework is up, but the job isn't done, not even close. Now comes the ongoing work, the day-to-day upkeep, the diligence and preparation you need to not only finish the house, but to keep it standing for a lifetime.
This piece of advice from verse 27 is just so incredibly practical. It's all about getting your priorities straight. First, do the hard work outside in the field. Establish your career, your resources, get your livelihood secure. Then, after that, you focus on building the house, the nice things, the legacy. You have to do it in that order.
And to make sure we really understand how important diligence is, the blueprint gives us this powerful little cautionary tale. The writer says in verse 30 that he walked by the field of a lazy person.
someone he calls void of understanding. And what he saw there was a lesson for all of us.
I mean, the description in verse 31 is just devastating. The field wasn't just a little weedy. No, it was completely overgrown with thorns. Nettles covered everything. And here's the most powerful detail. The stone wall, the thing that was supposed to protect it, was broken down. It's a picture of absolute neglect and decay.
Now, this is the crucial part in verse 32. The person watching doesn't just, shake his head and keep walking. He stops. He really thinks about it. And he says he received instruction. He realized this isn't just about a messy farm, it's a deep lesson about how life works.
So what was the giant disaster that caused all this ruin? A fire? A flood? Nope. Verse 33 tells us the quiet, simple, and honestly super relatable cause. It was just a little sleep, a little slumber. It's the slow creep of procrastination, of always saying, I'll do it tomorrow.
And here is the punchline in verse 34. The result of that little slumber isn't little at all. Poverty doesn't just slowly creep in. It comes on you suddenly. And your need, your want, it attacks you like an armed man. It's overwhelming, and it shows no mercy. All those small neglects add up to a sudden, total collapse.
So that brings us to the end of the blueprint. And what we're left with is a choice. Really. A choice represented by two completely different structures, two possible outcomes for the life that you and I are building.
And the contrast couldn't be more clear. On one side, you have the house of wisdom, from verse 4, where the rooms are filled with precious and pleasant riches. It's a life that has value, security, and real substance. And on the other side, you've got the field of sloth, from verse 31, where the protective stone wall was broken down. That's a life of ruin, vulnerability, and decay.
And that's what makes this ancient blueprint so relevant, even now. It doesn't end with a lecture. It just leaves us with this image that kind of forces us to look in the mirror. After seeing the whole plan, the foundation of wisdom, the framework of justice, the daily work of diligence, we're all left with one final, really personal question. What is the state of your fields today?